Hey face makers, welcome back to the factory. So today we're going to do a follow-up regarding the teeth for the Eddie makeup from Iron Maiden. One is a two-part brush-up mold on the lower section of teeth, and the upper is going to be what's called a case mold. It'll be on the upper teeth. The case mold is a completely different technique on making a silicone mold. It's actually a good way to learn because you can actually save a lot of excess material. It's just a little bit more time, but sometimes brushing things up and waiting for them to dry and adding additional coats can really turn into a lot more time than just taking the time to do the latter version, the case mold version. Case molds are used for a lot of things, doing full head casts, doing halves of hand molds where you actually lay up a layer of clay over your sculpture, make the matrix mold on top of it, then remove the clay, put the molds together, and pour your silicone inside. It's, in some cases, a much more efficient way to make molds, but sometimes because of the nature of the mold, you need to do a two-part mold. And I think it's important to show you both methods. They both work very well, and they're both very different. But we're going to get started on this. This is an all-new video on doing two different types of silicone teeth molds on the teeth for the Eddie from Iron Maiden makeup. So dive in and learn some cool stuff. We'll see you later. Okay, I'm doing my second half. I've cleaned away all the scaffolding, sat everything down flat. Now I can get at the other half of the mold. So I've cleaned it up a little bit, gotten rid of all the dried wet clay. I've sprayed this with a spray of crystal clear spray. Some people put Vaseline on this, but that's not really the best way to do it because you don't get a good coating on it for a non-stick surface, because you don't want the new silicone to bite onto this. So you spray it with an even coat of crystal clear spray. That way the new silicone doesn't stick to it. Also, before I start this other process, I'll probably spray a little mold release on there, a little spray on mold release. I use all kinds of mold releases. This is a good one to use, but better yet, if you use one that is a dry release. This is a McLube. It's a dry release. It doesn't leave a slick finish on it like Vaseline or something, so this is probably the better one to use. What I'm doing now is I put a floor on here, and what that does is it raises up 1/4 of an inch, so that in my final mold the base sticks up about this far from the top of the mold. That way when I put the mold together, I can get a hold of the top of the base or the bottom of the base, so it sticks up a little bit. So it raises it up. Now I'm putting a little wall around to contain the silicone as I brush it on. I don't want it to go spilling out all over the place. And that little wall, I'm going to trim it so it's exactly 1/4 of an inch. As you see, it's wrapping around. What I've done is I cut strips of clay to wrap around here, as you see. You notice how this one's cut at a 45-degree angle. That's the way I cut my clay as I put the wall around. I cut this one at a 45-degree angle too. And I'll cut this one at a 45-degree angle. So as I lay it together, see how it just kind of goes right together like that, and it'll come wrapping around. Give it a little push. That way when you blend it together, you get a nice connection between the two pieces of clay. If it's butt together like this, it can come apart, but if it's overlapped, you get more surface area. And then I go around here and I'll just kind of smooth it down on the inside. Then I'll give it a push to really tighten it up against that little floor clay that I have there. And you go along and you just blend the two connections together so that your silicone doesn't find a way out. Then I have a little piece here. It's a little short, so I'll just make use of all these little scrap pieces. So I'm going to cut this a little angle there, tuck that in there. See, it's not as tall as I want it, so I'm just going to cut a little piece here, put it right in there, smooth it down on the inside too. Now I just go along and I double check the height of it, because it's going to be catching all that silicone that goes running down as I start brushing it onto the mold. So just work cleanly when you're doing a mold. And that's my little wall. Now, I can go along with this very thin tool, and I can look down, see how the height is. I can trim off any excess. And if I rotate very carefully, I can get that same thickness all the way across the top. Go back. There we go. And if you make a mistake, it's a little low right here, you can pinch it to raise it up a little higher, just a little bit in that area. It's just a containment wall, you know. It's a little wall to help your silicone stay in place, and it'll give it an even thickness down here. So it doesn't have to be, you know, a piece of art. It just has to be functional. And if you have any areas that you want to maybe really secure it, just take some of this scrap pieces of clay, like here where it joints here. Just use clay as like use it like tape, you know, to smash things down and hold it in position. You know, you can even put it along here. If this was a big tall piece, I would go along the base of it and put some little worms along there just to kind of contain that. This is not a lot of silicone, but it helps you use your scraps up and, you know, find a good use for stuff that you normally would just throw in the trash. So I'm just going to put this around there to secure that. And if you want to take a little brush and go in there and do that too, you can do that as well. But now I'm going to do the same thing around here. Do a little wall, because when I'm pouring this up, I'm going to tilt the whole thing like so, and I'll have a little wall that goes around there as well, and it'll be about 1/4 of an inch high. Then when all that is done, I'll give it another spray of crystal clear, so this has a crystal clear coating on it. That way when I'm brushing my silicone, I'm not denting into the clay, because this clay is kind of soft. I don't want to leave brush marks into that. There's a few little places right here where you can see where that occurs. But if you spray it with crystal clear, it'll allow you to brush up and not affect the damp clay that's down there. Okay, I'm putting my little edge on here. What I'm doing is, because this clay is sitting on the edge of that, it can fall off. So I've got these little extra leftover pieces, so I'm just going to flatten them out and use them right along that edge to overlap here and overlap the clay, just to kind of hold it into place. I'm just tapping it down, and what that'll do is it'll add strength to this wall. It's basically a little retaining wall to hold back silicone. So I'll use these little scrap pieces to kind of hold everything into position. And I'm using wet clay. It's more sticky than other white clays. So now I can know that my wall is well supported. I just go along with my fingers, make sure it's all held in place. I can double check, make sure it's smooth along the top. And because it's thicker in some areas, I'm going to dip this in water and it'll help slice through it easier. So I can even do it this way. Actually, this is a thinner one. This is actually better. So I'll just spray this with water, and it'll allow me to slice through this clay at a more uniform speed. And there we go. Now that is just what I want. There we go. Then you can go back over it, smooth it down. There. See, that's 1/4 of an inch. The reason I did it that way is, why, 1/4 of an inch is all you need. You don't need a big, thick piece of silicone. It's wasteful. And when you're brushing it up, if it sticks out too far, you can't see up underneath the edge. So I just kind of go back in and finesse this, make sure it's tight up against the other silicone. And I'll slice it from this direction too. That way you can see exactly how thick your little wall is. Peel away the excess. A little more water on here. Helps it slide on the clay. So as I cut through it, there we go. Excess, get that off. There we go. Now I'm ready to mix up my silicone and start spreading it on. And before I do it, I'm going to give it a little last minute coating of crystal clear to kind of seal the surface. If you don't have crystal clear, that's okay. You can do it without. I'm just saying it's a good thing you might want to have in your little toolbox of supplies. Okie dokie. As far as how much you put on, doesn't take much. There, that's all we need. Get ready for that silicone. Here's the little thing I did to tilt it. I just tilted it back, put some boards under it, put some clay here to keep this all supported so it didn't slide around on me. Now it's tilted at a better angle to apply my silicone. See? Okay, we're getting my second layer all together. I just took 100 grams of silicone, ran it through my vacuum pump to get all the air out, blew out a little extra. Now I'm just going to put all this into place. Instead of brushing it, I'm trying to keep the silicone on the surface. I'm not just brushing it on. You got to look out for little brush hairs. There's one there. Always looking for air bubbles. See, at this angle I can brush up into this little wall area and also into the keys better. I can see if I got all the silicone into the keys. It's all going to run downhill and kind of settle in this corner on both sides, so just get it on there. Get a surface coat on there. That's the most important thing with this coat, because this is the coat without the air bubbles. This is the coat that's getting all the detail. So this is the most important coat to get on efficiently. Then you can start working it on. let it run downhill. Let the gravity be your friend. Let it work for you. Just kind of guide it as it goes. And again, this is why I like working on a turntable. I can turn it to see different sides and angles. Notice how I'm just laying the brush on there. I'm not dabbing into the clay. Even though I put a coating of crystal clear on there, I don't want to leave little brush marks in the clay. Once you get this on and in place, you can go over it with your airbrush or your air tool, blow some air on it, make sure you release any air bubbles that might be trapped. I see a few in there. See, at this angle, I can get up in all those detailed areas and up along that wall. As it starts to get thicker and starts to set, then I'll have a little more control of pushing it around. But right now, it's just getting that surface coat is the most important thing. So now this is the underside of the teeth, so it's not so critical. The other side, the first side I did, I have all that detail, so that's the most important. But both sides of your molds are important too. They all require the same amount of attention to get it done properly. So you just kind of work your way across. It's starting to thicken up now. I can see it. If you're ever in a situation where you're in hot weather and your silicone sets up too quickly on you, you can add a retarder to slow it down. And in the same sense, if you're doing something that's very small and you want it to happen very quick, you can add something to accelerate it. However, I don't recommend using accelerator in your silicone. Only if it's a small little piece and you need to get it done quickly. The regular set time is perfectly, enough to work with. So as you see, it's getting thick. So I'm getting this lower section first. See, I'm getting it up into that corner. You don't want to trap air bubbles up in there. A few bubbles right there, you just go along and pop them with the tip of your brush. So we'll continue this, and I'll put another coat on afterwards. Okay, now this is the second batch. This has got Cabasil in it to add a little thickener to it. Take my brush, brush it into all the areas that need some better coverage, and push it into all the deep pockets where I missed. That way, the lower surface is already set, so I don't have to worry about disturbing that thin layer of silicone that's already in place. That way you get a good coverage over it. It's not as runny, and when it starts to set, it'll be easier to move around, because the thickener that you add to silicone makes it like a thick gel. When you add Cabasil to it, it's like a paste. So it just gives you more control over putting down a thick layer. And as it starts to set, you'll still have the same ability to move it. It's not like a jelly like the other thickener adds to the properties of the silicone. What I'll probably end up doing is mixing another little mini batch to finalize that. In the meantime, I'll take this and smooth this area right here. Getting up underneath that lip. Fill that void. There we go. Okay. open this up. As you notice, my base extends out so I can get a little pressure on it. Even if I need to put a clamp on it, I can. A little rasp, kind of clean the edges up a little bit. Get a little bit of clay off of there. Okay, so now we have the mold is open. Now I have access to this by itself and this on the back half. Once the mold is together, I can then drop in this this piece here. Just drop it right in, clamp it tight, and that's our piece. Now that's just the lower teeth. Now let's get to work on the upper.